There's a decision being made behind the scenes in Los Angeles that matters more than any flashy signing this offseason. Joe Hortiz stayed out of the spotlight, Jim Harbaugh changed the mind running the offense, and now 4 separate signals are pointing toward the same question. Was Mike McDaniel truly given the pieces he needs to unleash Justin Herbert when the pressure hits in January? Today, we're getting inside that machine, from the most intriguing man in the building to the disrespect already reaching this defense. Hit like, subscribe, and rate your confidence in this offensive rebuild from 0 to 10. Let's open the right door here. The Chargers' most intriguing addition might never wear a uniform. When Daniel Popper of The Athletic chose the newcomer who deserves the most attention in Los Angeles, he didn't pick David Njoku, Tyler Biadasz, Cole Strange, or any of the 8 players added through the draft. He went directly to Mike McDaniel. That tells us exactly how this offseason was designed from the inside. Joe Hortiz had cap space, but he didn't chase an expensive superstar just to sell immediate impact. He kept players like Khalil Mack, Denzel Perryman, Trevor Penning, and Tony Jefferson, rebuilt the interior offensive line, and handed the offense to a completely different kind of mind. That's the defining move because the Chargers have already proven they can reach the playoffs under Jim Harbaugh. They've put together back-to-back 11-win seasons. The problem is what happened when the stage tightened and every play call started carrying the weight of an entire season. Against Houston and New England, Greg Roman's offense scored 1 touchdown across 2 playoff exits, losing 32, 12, and 16-3. There's no dressing that up. You have to understand the internal message. Los Angeles didn't simply replace its play caller. It changed its answer to the most uncomfortable question hanging over this franchise. Justin Herbert is 0.3 in the playoffs. Across his 2 most recent losses, he completed 33 of 63 passes for 401 yards, 1 touchdown, and 4 interceptions, with all 4 coming against the Texans. He was also sacked 10 times and lost a fumble in Foxborough. I defend Herbert when people try to put the entire story on him because no quarterback operates alone, especially behind collapsing protection inside a predictable offense. But I'm not running away from the size of this assignment either. The next step in Herbert's career has to arrive exactly when the game stops feeling comfortable. That's where McDaniel becomes bigger than just another off-season addition. He spent 4 years leading Miami, and now he arrives in Los Angeles to create answers before the snap, manipulate defenses, manufacture space, and keep Herbert from needing to win every down with arm talent alone. Njoku and Charlie Kolar expand the possibilities at tight end. Biadasz, Strange, and a rebuilt interior line are supposed to settle the pocket. If Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt can stay healthy, they give McDaniel a foundation any coordinator would love to have. Behind closed doors, the bet sounds simple, but looks brutally hard to execute. Harbaugh will keep defining this team's identity, but McDaniel has to give the offense enough creativity to survive January. If the partnership works, Herbert won't need to carry the entire building on his back. He'll be able to control games. If it fails, no progress report will cover up another empty offensive playoff exit. The Chargers season begins before the first snap, with these 2 coaches finding a way to share control, blend philosophies, and turn talent into actual answers. The next clue isn't attached to a headline name. It belongs to a player who sees a little more than 1/3 of the offensive snaps and could determine whether McDaniel's entire design truly moves. Alec Ingold. The fullback signed a 2-year, $7.5 million deal. If you only look at the playing time, it feels like a small detail. Ingold played 37% of Miami's offensive snaps in 2025. Scott Matlock played 31% for the Chargers. The numerical difference is tiny. The functional difference could be enormous. Ingold already understands McDaniel's language, timing, and motion requirements. He doesn't need to dominate possession to change the point of attack, travel across the formation, block on the move, and make a linebacker hesitate for half a second. That hesitation matters because the previous rushing plan never found the structure it needed. Through the first 3 games of 2025, before Najee Harris went down against Denver, Los Angeles averaged only 92.3 rushing yards per game. Stretched across a full season, that number would have ranked near the bottom of the league. The injuries to Harris and Omarion Hampton hurt Greg Roman's vision, no question, but they don't explain everything. The interior line was inconsistent, and Matlock had limitations working in space. Trying to play physical football without creating angles became stubbornness, not identity. McDaniel demands a different geometry. His outside zone system requires synchronization, mobility, and blockers who can sell one direction before opening up another. That's why Ingold can be both a quiet signing and an essential one. With Hampton and Keaton Mitchell attacking open space, the fullback can clear first contact, reposition defenders, and allow that speed to reach the second level. Ingold may appear in just over 30% of the plays. His impact, however, can live inside the other 70 because the defense still has to respect the same formations and movement. Those are the additions that reveal the plan behind the roster construction. Tyler Biadasz received a 3-year, $30 million deal to stabilize the middle of the line. That's the visible investment. Ingold is the glue. He connects the running game to the play-action passing game, helps McDaniel disguise intentions, and brings someone to Los Angeles who already knows what this offense should look like once it finds its rhythm. I love this kind of move. Not because every inexpensive player automatically turns into a steal, but because the role is crystal clear. The Chargers didn't sign a fullback just to check a box on the depth chart. They signed a translator for their new offense. If Ingold helps Hampton and Mitchell get the ball in space, gives Herbert play-action opportunities against displaced defenses, and lets the line attack instead of simply survive, that $7.5 million will look like one small piece of a much bigger transformation. The most overlooked name of the offseason could become the man who gets every important name speaking the same language within the same play. This is where the optimism needs to lower its voice and take a hard look at the protection. Justin Herbert was brought down 54 times in 2025, the third highest total among quarterbacks, and only one sack away from the league lead. Changing the system helps, replacing personnel helps, but the right side of the interior line still has a competition that familiarity alone cannot settle. Cole Strange arrived on a 2-year, $13 million contract after working with McDaniel in Miami. The connection is real, and it makes sense. Strange knows the offense, moves well, and according to offensive line coach Butch Barry, has the athletic traits the Chargers want. Barry also praised his communication, his example on the field, and his desire to be in Los Angeles. That brings real value during a complete change in offensive language. A veteran who recognizes the adjustments can speed up the development of the other 4 linemen, but Mo Moton of Bleacher Report projected Strange as the Chargers' biggest potential bust of 2026. His criticism is centered on pass protection. According to Pro Football Focus, Strange allowed 21 pressures and 2 sacks across 451 pass-blocking snaps last season. His grades only add to the concern: 54.9 overall, 42.2 in pass protection, and 57 as a run blocker. Moton argues that Los Angeles replaced one below-average guard, Zion Johnson, with another vulnerable player, and paid too much to make that move. I'm not treating a July projection like a final verdict, especially when it ignores the context of a new fit. But I'm not defending Strange just because he wears our colors now either. If McDaniel's job is to take some of the weight off Herbert's shoulders, the pressure coming through the middle has to come down. A quarterback can escape an edge rusher, climb the pocket, and keep reading the field. When a guard loses inside, the play dies right in front of him. That exact kind of collapse turned far too many downs into emergencies last season. The competition is where this behind-the-scenes story becomes interesting. Strange wasn't handed a lifetime appointment. Trevor Penning remains an alternative. Training camp will expose every single rep, and this staff already knows Strange well enough to understand exactly what needs correction. His advantage is arriving fluent in the coordinator's language. His responsibility is turning that advantage into better football than his recent numbers suggest. So instead of falling into the easy bust versus great signing argument, I'm watching 3 signals. How Strange handles quick interior movement, whether his communication with Biotish eliminates free rushers, and who earns the staff's trust on obvious passing downs. The answer has to come from the field, not from Strange's status as a former first-round pick, or the hope that the scheme will magically fix everything. There is a legitimate chance Los Angeles purchased a guard who can be more useful inside this structure than he was outside of it. There's also a real risk that familiarity cost the Chargers $13 million without eliminating their most dangerous weakness. The staff has to judge this battle without ego, because protecting Herbert isn't a reward for knowing the system. It's the requirement for keeping the starting job. While the offense works to prove that every piece has a purpose, the defense just received an almost insulting message from talent evaluators around the league. Jeremy Fowler collected votes from executives, coaches, and scouts for his 2026 edge rusher rankings. Khalil Mack and Tuipulotu didn't make the top 10. They weren't honorable mentions. Neither player even appeared among the additional names that received votes in the article. Put the full picture on the table without overreacting. The top 10 includes Myles Garrett, Micah Parsons, Will Anderson Jr., Max Crosby, Aiden Hutchinson, Danielle Hunter, TJ Watt, Nick Bosa, Brian Burns, and Nick Bonito. That is a loaded group. I understand why Mack at 35 faces questions about maintaining elite production. I can also accept that Tuli may need to repeat his performance for another season before he permanently enters that top tier. What doesn't add up is the total invisibility after the main cutoff. Jared Verse, Trey Hendrickson, and Josh Hines-Allen received honorable mentions. Travon Walker, Jalen Phillips, Montez Sweat, Laiatu Latu, Nick Herbig, and Alex Highsmith were listed among the players who received votes. Once that many names enter the conversation and neither Charger appears anywhere close to the margins, we're no longer debating only the elite at the position. We're asking whether the work being done in Los Angeles is receiving any recognition whatsoever. Tuli is coming off a 2025 season with 13 sacks and 75 pressures. He's in contract negotiations, and he's entering a year that could define both his price and his place in the national hierarchy. Even at this stage of his career, Mack still has the technique, power, and awareness to change an offensive series. Now Akeem Mesidor, a first-round pick, completes a trio that new defensive coordinator Chris O'Leary can deploy more aggressively in pursuit of pressure. The Chargers' temperature here shouldn't be measured through empty outrage. I want to know what kind of response that locker room plans to put on the field. Tuli can use the silence as fuel and prove 2025 wasn't an isolated peak. Mack can show that age lowers outside expectations, not necessarily his on-field impact. Mesidor can keep protection schemes from loading up against the two veterans. If O'Leary distributes those matchups properly, being left out of the rankings becomes a psychological advantage. Opponents focus on more celebrated names while Los Angeles builds wave after wave of pressure. This story connects directly back to the first one. McDaniel was hired to make Herbert and the offense function in the biggest moments. The defense, meanwhile, has to create extra possessions, shorten the field, and finish games before everything once again rests on the quarterback delivering a perfect drive. A productive edge trio isn't a luxury. It's part of protecting Herbert indirectly, and part of building a team with real January ambition. I'd put that ranking on the wall inside the defensive meeting room. Not so they can complain about it for months, but as a reminder that respect in the NFL always arrives late when a franchise keeps stacking early playoff exits. Tuli has the numbers to kick the door down. Mack has the resume to challenge the clock. Mesidor brings fresh legs. Now all three of them need to make it impossible for executives, coaches, and scouts to repeat that omission in 2027. Chargers community, drop the first image that came to mind when you saw Tuli didn't receive a single vote. I want the raw reaction, because this kind of disrespect can move an entire locker room. The story behind this offseason doesn't show a front office standing still. It shows a coordinated bet that depends, dangerously, on execution. McDaniel has to change Herbert's January story. Ingold must move a machine most people never notice. Strange needs to prove that knowing the system can also keep the pocket clean. And Mack, Tuli, and Mesidor just received another reason to hunt quarterbacks. Los Angeles doesn't need to win debates in July, but it does need to turn every signal into an answer. If you want to follow the next move in this transformation, subscribe and stay right here. The pressure started inside the building. Now it has to show up on the field.